the reason why we're here is there's a tired argument in the world again, like it's almost vegan against meat eaters and all of that, and there's angst, and there is a situation where meat eaters think that vegans are dictating to them and, you know, browbeating people into the world. What I wanted to do was sit down with someone who is a vegan, who doesn't seem to be any kind of vegan, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Militant vegan.
Militant vegan. I don't know if you are. I don't know anything about you really, apart from I saw you at a music festival I played in years and years ago, and I said hello because I knew your name, and then I went, how do I know you?
Yeah.
And that was weird, right? And I remembered that the other day, but then I saw you being an active vegan, but you seem to have a manner that suggests that you're not here to beat me over the head with it.
No.
Or beat the people on your Instagram over the head with it.
No, I would agree with that. From what I've found personally, as someone, I've been vegan coming up to 8 years now, so it's been a while, and what I've found is the way that I express myself, and it's something I'm very passionate about, but I find that if you are militant with people, if you are overbearing with people, if you have this whole holier than thou, how could you possibly be doing what you're doing, sort of personality about you, people don't want to listen to that. You know, people don't want to be told that they're doing something wrong. People especially don't like someone who comes off as thinking that they're better than them. That's not a good way to communicate with someone. When I first started out, I went veggie when I was 13, and it was really cringy because I just discovered vegetarianism and that, oh my God, we're killing all of these animals. And I did photo shoots where I would cover myself in blood, and I had all of these, I would do public talks, and I would do all. Now, I am by no means bashing, vocalizing veganism and spreading the word about veganism. However, I was very much, if you do this, you're a shitty person, which is not a good way to be. Do you think
that a lot of people start up that way? If you're going to be vegan by choice, okay, because there are other vegans who have to be because of health, like Kevin Smith, you know, Jay and Silent Bob, that director, he had a massive heart attack, so became vegan to keep himself alive. Okay, that kind of thing, you know, is fine. Do you think, and I've seen a lot of people do this who I know who've gone vegan, by a lot actually, I've seen 3 people do it, let's quantify that. So what they've done is they've gone from meat eater to vegan by choice, and then told the rest of the world that they're shitheads for not being it, and then they've gone, oh, hold on a minute, because they found their level.
Right.
Do you think there's some insecurity about being veganism, or do you feel that you have to be militant?
Do you know what I think it is? I mean, I can only speak from personal experience. I think for me, especially, I mean, the transition into vegetarianism, I was quite young, and I was sort of, I think you're very passionate about everything when you're a teenager, like everything is so much bigger. And I'm not trivializing the issue, but I found the things that I found out to be so shocking, and the fact that people were going along with this, in my opinion, industrialized, normalized torture was so shocking to me that I felt that I had to spread the word about this, and I had to be, you know, I had to shock people, and I had to sort of shout my opinions from the rooftops. And as time's gone on, it hasn't become an issue that's less important to me. However, what it is that I'm now familiar with the practices that we use in the UK to obtain animal products, and I'm still not comfortable with them for me personally. However, I think it's more important now to educate people, to just tell people my opinion rather than trying to shove it down their throats, because I think, in answer to your question, maybe people are so, to use the word militant, when they first turn vegan because they're shocked, you know, they're surprised because it's all new information to them, and they think everybody's got to know about this, you know, everyone's got to know how terrible this is.
I think there should be a level of education where everyone knows where their meat comes from, everyone knows where their vegetables come from, everyone knows how food gets from wherever it starts walking around in a field into the home. And I don't think a lot of people do know where their meat comes from.
This is one of my fundamental reasons why I'm vegan, because I don't have a problem with the idea of human beings eating meat. I know that we have digestive systems which can tolerate meat in our diet. Aside from the point, I think as a species we consume a bit too much meat, but regardless, if you want to eat meat, sure, you can. It won't, you know. However, I do feel that there's a massive disconnect between what people get on their plates, you know, a hamburger or a chicken nugget, and I would be surprised if everyone that comfortably eats meat could go out and kill that animal for themselves. Yep. If you can do that, then okay, you know. It's not the practice of eating meat that personally I don't agree with. It's the way in which we get that meat, and also the disconnect that people have. I think the reason that a lot of people, or a lot more people, aren't vegan is for two main reasons. And I think it's because partially it's something that's been so normalised to us since birth. One of the first things you give a baby is cow's milk.
Yep.
And nobody has ever really, and you know, cow's milk equals calcium, and we need cow's milk to have healthy, strong bones. And in fact, there's been a lot of studies that show the opposite is true.
Yep.
So I think a big part of it is just the normalisation of this process, and it's in everyday's life. And if you're a vegan, you're considered to be extreme. It's an extreme diet, you know. It's very, it's a bit much in it, the whole vegan thing. Again, I can only say the way that I feel, but I think that if you witness something that you feel so passionately against, and you don't take steps in your life to not be part of that, then I think that's the more extreme option out of the two. I think that to comfortably be able to say that you're happy to go out and kill an animal and then put it on your plate, if that's the facts, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But
so subsistence farming, i.e. you kill what you need, you grow what you need, isn't an issue in your mind.
Well, again,
so if you're a man, you live in a cave, you have a woman and a child to provide for. Back in those days, right? You kill a wild boar, and that then feeds your family. Okay, you killed it because you need to eat. Is it justified to kill that animal for your own needs in your eyes?
I'd have to say yes. In that situation, we're taking away from, you know, no one's ever really realistically going to be in that situation, especially not in this day and age in this country. But for the sake of argument, I don't have a problem with that fundamentally. No. Okay.
So the other thing that should be said about like medically doing things with milk and things like that, in the 1950s, if I had some kind of cough or didn't feel well, so the doctor would prescribe me to smoke cigarettes. Because in that time, medically, they weren't seen as carcinogenic. Now, of course, they are. You know, cow's milk now, it seems to me that what was medically correct 20 years ago, there's always a shift in it. The same as the red wine argument. You know, everyone says you should have 2 glasses of red wine at least a week because that helps you do this and you know, whatever. But what happens is as science moves on, they find out new things, and they're finding out new things about eating red meat and about eating or you know, having that kind of stuff leads to amino acid deficiency if you don't eat some meat, and then that can cause real problems with some people. I think my problem lies in the fact, as I said to you before we came on, my problem lies in the fact that I don't have an argument against being vegan, apart from, one, it's a massive, massive life and culture shift, which then, because my family aren't vegan, and maybe I shouldn't enforce my veganism if I was to become it onto them. My son is a child, and I don't think anyone really knows what the detrimental effects of veganism in a nutritional way would be for that child. But I can't sit here and tell you that, you know, being a meat eater is right.
Well, I mean, equally, I can't come back and tell you the health benefits for a child for being vegan because I'm not a nutritionist and I don't know. What I would say in regards to that is I think that it's difficult because another facet of this is it practical for everyone to be vegan? You know, that's a big argument. I mean, if you're going to say to a single mum that's because I think you need to be realistic about these things, which again, when I first went vegan, I was like, everyone should be vegan. You know, this is the only way to be. And as you get older and as you kind of, I don't want to say settle down because it sounds like I've stopped caring, which isn't the case. But as you become a lot more tolerant, you listen to other people a lot more. A single mum that can feed her entire kids on frozen meat from Asda for the week is not going to suddenly go over to buying goji berries and do green smoothies for everyone.
No, absolutely.
That's not going to happen.
So, I mean, a lot of the argument against is economics.
Well, saying this though, going on from that, I agree with that. I agree that, and you know, the argument is always, oh, but it's so expensive to be vegan. It's so expensive. Now, I agree with that to a point. I do think that if you are going out and you're buying meat substitutes and you're buying, you know, vegan versions of this, vegan eggs, for example, £7 a pot, very expensive, silly expensive, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I think that there is a way to do vegan on a budget, because I have done it.
Yeah.
However, I wouldn't feel confident necessarily talking. I mean, I personally have never been ill, touch wood, due to my diet. I can say that fairly confidently.
Okay.
And I have done vegan on a budget, so I do think there's a way to do it. But again, it's just thinking about practical effects that you can have on the industry as a whole. So supply and demand is the basic concept behind any business.
Yep.
If you can reduce, if you feel able to reduce the amount of animal products that you're bringing into your home, then that's amazing. I also don't put stock in vegans that say things like, "We're going vegetarians. There's no point in it." Well, there is a point in it. The argument behind that is that the meat industry directly fuels the dairy industry, and the two are very intertwined.
Yep.
However, I do think there's a point in going vegetarian or doing whatever you can, even buying household products that aren't tested on animals, anything you can do, because it does show a trend, and it does show the suppliers that there is a shift in people's mentality. And also, myself included, vegetarianism for a lot of people can be a transition. It can be a step for people. Yep. It can, so I do think there's
I have seen people do the transition. So vegetarian first to see how they get on. I can't live without chicken. I can't live without fish. Right. Also, a lot of vegetarians say I'm vegetarian, but I'll eat fish. But fish is one of the most inhumane things to catch and kill. Absolutely. Without line and hook. So the trouble with all arguments with food is that there is always a juxtaposition. There is always a valid argument. And if people can't see the other side from where they're standing, that means they have no objectivity. If you take away objectivity, then you have no knowledge, you have no reasoning. You therefore can't have a conversation, right? As a vegan, I have no hatred towards you because you're a vegan, right? I don't know how you feel about me being a meat eater, but you've already said you can understand the realities of it because, we've all grown up doing it.
I barely know any vegans. If I hated all meat eaters, I'd have no friends. I'd never get in a relationship. I'd never...
Exactly, right. So that's no good for anybody. So, I think what you said about vegetarianism being valid because it reduces the amount of meat you eat. It reduces the amount of animal products. I think that's very valid. If all things to reduce the carbon footprint, to reduce the levels of, African nations are selling the corn that they make, instead of feeding the children, that they have, they feed animals in other countries. And yet we stand there. Now, I wonder how many people listening to this, and I couldn't care less if, they think they're going to argue with me. I know that's true. So I wonder how many people who actually do listen to this know that fact.
Well, the second point, I realised that I never mentioned the second point why I think...
What's the second one?
A lot of more people aren't vegan, and I think it's a lack of information.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally, we don't know a lot about where our food comes from. We don't know, a lot of people, the amount of people that say to me, well, cows have to be milked, or they'll just explode with milk. A cow has to be impregnated to produce milk. A cow is a mammal. A cow does not just leak milk all of its life.
No, a cow has to be pregnant to make milk. And therefore, there was a point I thought of, which is probably really puerile, but I was thinking, what happens if we do dramatically change the amount of people who don't eat meat? Say we have a 50% shift towards vegetarianism. What happens to all these cows?
It's a very valid point, and it's something that I've thought about myself. I think that realistically, I know we're talking about what if sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think realistically the drop off would be a lot more gradual, and therefore going back to supply and demand, I think the breeding would decrease to reflect the population, and it would be a much more gradual slide off, and suddenly we've got all of these surplus cows.
I think that might be part of the problem, because we can only deal in what ifs, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow. We're not going to wake up and everyone's gone, I'm going vegetarian, screw you meat eaters, I don't want it. Right? What's going to happen is that there is a global shift in the recognition of veganism as a reality. Right? Veganism isn't new. This started in 1944, and it then became a reality in 1949. I can't remember the guy's name. Let me find out, because then I can sound it like I know what I'm talking about. I am shuffling paper. I apologise.
I don't know. Queen
right. So Leslie Cross, even in 1949, pointed out society lacked a definition of veganism. So basically, a definition of the principles of veganism were posted and made available in 1949. So.
I believe they have changed since then, though, haven't they, over the years to reflect?
Right, the definition in 1988 changed, and then the phrasing was changed slightly over the years, so it remains fundamental to it. So you've got something that isn't new. Yeah, you've got people who haven't eaten meat and they haven't used meat products. Obviously, testing on animals is only new because science is, that kind of science is new. So it's really a problem that stems from after the war, where the world's becoming a boom nation, a place where consumerism and, all kinds of business are looking for money. So economics, consumerism, the whole throwaway society as well. When you've got a group of animals then that are there seen as lesser beings that can be used to further the cause of humanism, if you want to use that.
I would agree with that. I think also, interestingly, going back to what you were saying about the war, is you can, again, you don't have to take my word for it. You can Google this and you can look it up yourself. There's market research that shows that there was a dramatic decrease in things like cancers, things like heart attacks, things like strokes during our world wars. And the reason being was because of rationing, because people were actively consuming a lot less dairy, a lot less meat. There's correlations that you can look up, and you can see that countries that actively eat more animal products suffer more from these health ailments. So,
it's happening to us all. Have you got your teeth in, dear?
So even if, for argument's sake, I think that there's lots of different reasons that people go vegan. I think at the moment it's, I hesitate to use this, I think it's very in at the moment to be vegan.
Fashionable.
I think it's very, you're vegan and you do this and you do that. And I personally don't have a problem with this. I know a lot of vegans, which strangely enough do have a problem with this. And this is not all vegans are good people. No. There's a lot of shitty vegans out there and there's this hierarchy of vegans, like, oh, I'm veganer than thou, and I've had debates online where, for example, a vegan, I used little air quotes there, was saying that you can't be trans and you can't be vegan because some hormones that trans people take to have horse hormones in them. So you can't possibly be a trans person and a vegan at the same time. Now, obviously, because I'm sane, I disagreed with that.
Wow. Has it gone there already? Do you know what I mean? So
to that end, now this person was, they had a lot of conflicting beliefs of my own. They were very religious and they were saying that, this and that and the other. Right. And that the veganism had started in the Bible and it's not for me. But my argument, I was trying to say to this person, the actual new definition of veganism as coined by the Vegan Society now is to limit your intake or to avoid animal products as much as practical and as much as you can do, which is, speaking for me, what I try to do. People that like to have a vegan debate, and there's nothing wrong with a vegan debate, but if you do something different from other people, they want to know, they are going to ask you questions. They like to try and catch you out. They like to go, well, what if a cab comes to pick you up and it has leather seats? Or they like to go, well, what about if you have cancer and you have to go get chemotherapy and that's been tested on animal? Of course it has. Of course it has. Because you can't possibly in this world avoid everything that at some point's been tested on animals or at some point was an animal. You can't take a walk in the woods without squishing a bug. We're not talking about that.
You know that all medicines in the UK have to be tested on animals to be released by them for use.
This is where I have to draw the line because I personally, to the best of my ability, try to avoid any kind of cosmetics that have been tested on animals because I think it's completely unnecessary. I take painkillers. If I've got a cough, I take cough syrup. I had very bad kidney infection last year, and I had to take antibiotics that had lactose in them.
Right.
Yeah, there's no point in pretending that I don't do any of these things because I'm a normal person and I get ill sometimes and I need to take my prescribed medication.
Yeah.
It's just about doing what you can do in your lifestyle to as much as is practical.
But militants would tear you to pieces for that,
absolutely.
wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So,
and I said to him, I was like, you're the vegan that makes us look bad. You're the kind of vegan that makes normal vegans look like crazies.
Does he have a point, though? Does he? Right, all I'm thinking, this is just flashing into my head, so follow me here.
Okay.
Right, if you've got a vegan who is a vegan, who's practicing every day, but then when they get sick, they would then bow to the products that have animals because they have to, right? Is that right?
Okay, so I get the point that you're making, well, why shouldn't you, in theory, if I understand where you're going with, why shouldn't you just get sick and die? Because your life is not worth more than that of the animals. Is that the point that you're
I'm not
making?
sure that I was, but that's a better point, I think. Yeah, I mean, you've got a belief system, and the belief system is only valid if you follow it to its conclusion.
Yeah.
Or you're just paying lip service to it. Now, that's a harsh idea. Obviously, when you're living in a country that says you can't take a medicine without it going for an animal first, you haven't got any damn choice. And nobody's going to die for that.
No.
And well, I mean, I'm not saying nobody, but any sane person would think that, it's not worth putting your family through that kind of ill just because you have these things. But how does it make you feel to take a medicine that has been tested on an animal? Do you think about it now, or do you just think, I've got to do this, fuck it?
I still think about it because I try. I mean, I definitely don't do this with everything, but I try as much as I can to think about where my food has come from, and what kind of, especially now, what kind of packaging it has. We're learning more and more about this kind of stuff. I've got a bag full of plastic over there to take home that I want to recycle because I don't want to put it in the bins. But
well, that's valid. That's a valid thing.
But it doesn't make me feel good. I would say that. I would just say that I would go back to what I said earlier, that you need to do what's practical and what's realistic and what's doable.
Yeah.
Now, does it kind of, ruin the integrity of the idea that all life is equal, which is essentially what vegans are saying?
Yeah. I
suppose you could look at it like that. You could look at it as, well, why, if you feel so passionately about this, why are you taking the chemo that's been tested on rats? I think, again, it's about, you need to value your own life, you need to value the lives of people around you, and you just need to take practical steps to do what you feel comfortable with.
There has to be a line of perspective.
Of course. I mean, otherwise you're not going to buy clothes because, you're not going to shop in Primark, you're not going to, I'm not a perfect vegan, I do things that other vegans would say is necessary. For example, I drive a car. You'll get people that are so vegan that they refuse to drive a car because of the fossil fuels in petrol, because of the CO2 emissions, or because of these kind of things that, I drive. I buy things very rarely, but occasionally from high street stores, which is fast fashion. It's about doing, what you can do. It can be said
though that, the whole car thing is not necessarily based in veganism, is it? That's based in, what's the word when you're trying to save the planet?
I would say that, I mean, for me, it's part of veganism. I don't know what the word that you're trying to think of is, but... you've got... what's the flipping word? Why? Oh, my brain has gone dead. Yeah, there you go, that'll do it. Right, so you're an environmentalist, and then therefore you don't drive because of fossil fuels. I can see the direct correlation with that argument. But if you're not driving a car because of the CO2 output, what's that got to do with veganism? Well,
I've missed that.
Okay, so...
It's about education, man. You've got to educate me.
Again... I think personally that if you actually look down on paper the term for veganism, it's avoiding all animal products. That's the dictionary definition of veganism. For me, the way that I look at veganism is it's a compassionate lifestyle. So you are doing what you can do to limit suffering as much as possible. And for me, that encapsulates things like global warming, things like pollution.
I think the penny just dropped. So basically, it's equality for all animals, us being animals too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think there's a thing that vegans hate humans. Some people.
Sure, some of them do. There's a lot of meat eaters who are assholes too. That's the thing. I think the trouble is with any ideal, i.e., an ideal lifestyle, an ideal of living, is that humans get in the way of it. Because humans have a necessity or a need fundamentally for conflict, and also humans have a terrible need to be right.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people will be militant vegan. Obviously they have the vegan tendencies, but the militants have a need for everyone who isn't like them to be wrong, which then puts them on a pedestal. If you're not militant about it and you're not standing there trying to educate me in a way where you're browbeating me, then you've got a problem yourself. I would have said. Also,
I think the opposite is true as well. I think I've encountered a lot of meat eaters that actively dislike me because I'm vegan, or actively want to fight with me.
Doesn't that just make them an asshole?
But I think it's the same thing. Why are you so insecure about what I'm eating or what I'm wearing? What does that matter to you? This
was my thing the other day, and I was reading something, and I cannot remember what the fuck it was. Right, but I suddenly thought, who gives a shit? Does someone care this much about what I eat? Because I really hope they don't. Because
where do you get your protein from?
Well, fuck knows, chicken. But okay, used to be a lot fatter than I am. I'm still pretty fat, right? But I used to be like 23 stone, right? So then I went on this diet with Slimming World, okay? And then I lost like 4 stone and a bit because I had to medically, right? So I ate baked beans, celery, chilies. I can't do anything without chilies. Luckily, they're a vegetable, right? Somebody will put me right. They're not vegetables, are they? But never mind. We'll take that as read, right? But basically, I took out all cooking fat, all everything, and the only thing I was supposed to eat was any meat without fat. And then, but for easiness sake, it ended up being baked beans and celery to fatten it out with a bit, losing bread and doing all that. And then, you know, if somebody actually looked at my diet, they would then question, 1, my sanity, and 2, you know, what are you? Are you a vegan? Are you a vegetarian? Are you this? Are you that? And I'm like, I'm nothing. I'm doing this for a reason. Why do we have to pigeonhole everything? That's the other thing. You're either this or you're that. What happens if I don't eat meat because I don't eat meat? So this week I don't eat meat, next week I don't eat meat, and then I don't. But I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a vegan.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? You can't pigeonhole that.
No, I guess not.
So for human beings, there's 2 sides to everything, and it's usually black and white.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so there's always grey, but if you're in the black or you're in the white, you don't see the grey because you don't want to see it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I think when you have... Right, so vegans have a tendency to... No, that's a completely generalised bollocks. Right, a few vegans I have seen, the militant ones, will stand on a soapbox and denounce everyone who doesn't follow them because of the cruelty and because of the poverty, because of the CO2 and the damage to the planet that all of these economically driven fields provide. And they're not wrong.
I mean, they're not wrong, but I think there's a different way to go about that.
Exactly. So what I'm saying, I think, is that if we were in a position where people weren't trying to stop other people doing things, but they were trying to educate people, I think, wouldn't that be a lot more valid for a lot more people would listen to what was happening?
Oh, absolutely. I would be more inclined to listen to someone that was trying to educate me rather than telling me how shitty I am.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that would work. I've been told I've been quite shitty a lot of my life because I have been. Do you know what I mean? You have to, as you get older, I'm 45 now, right? And that's the oldest I've ever been. So that's the only frame of reference that I have. But from the age of 30, where I spiraled out of control in a vicious manner, to now, I've managed to stop being a drug addict, stop being a criminal, stop the bad things in my life that are influencing me. But I did it on my terms for me. It wasn't, I've got a wife, I've got a child. I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a child. I did it for me because if I didn't do it, I was going to die. Right? Now, that's very dramatic. Take away the drama, take away the emotion out of all of it. If we were to all realise what was happening to the planet because of the farming, dairy industry, the meat industry, and also the poverty and death caused by this industry, maybe if everyone was educated by that, it might stop more people from eating meat or lessening their meat and lessening their meaty footprint. Do you know what I mean? Which then would have a great effect, which is what you said earlier. And I keep thinking we're going in circles, and I'll tell you why, because life is cyclical. And education is like that. But I think I've had a realisation in as much as that I see the benefits of not eating meat. I see the benefits and why people do it. And all it is a miscommunication about the realities of why people are vegan.
Yeah.
And a miscommunication about people's attitudes towards it. You know, there are people... Okay, look at Brexit.
Okay.
I hate this Brexit, but I'm using it because it's polarised.
You guys thought you were going to get a podcast about Brexit, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, sadly. Right, I am only bringing this because Brexit is polarised. Literally 50% of the country.
Yeah.
And 50% of the country have been lied to and done this on both sides.
Yeah, okay.
So you put that in veganism and meat eating, it's exactly the same. Because meat eaters such as myself have grown up around farming. I grew up living half the year on a dairy farm that as a byproduct was meat at the end. So yeah, I grew up holding calves, hand rearing them, putting in the field, birthing lambs, doing all this, and then they all get put in a truck and going off, and I didn't think about it.
You didn't think about it? No,
because that was my life. I was 5 years old, right? But I think about that now. And I think what was the weirdest thing was every season we were allowed, I was there, I was only there for 2 seasons, then we moved, but I was allowed to keep a calf and a lamb.
Wow, lucky one.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And now, at the time, as a child, you pour your love into these things because they are the ones that you are controlling of. That's very clever manipulation of it. But the farmer didn't know he was manipulating me.
No.
He wanted to give me something to look after, to teach me values of animal behaviour. It's fundamentally flawed, because what we should have been doing is saving all of those.
I do agree with that, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like you say, as someone that's had experience with this, you said you were very young, so did you ever see anything that upset you, or was it just kind of one of those when you're a kid and you don't really fully understand what's going on?
Two-headed lambs.
Wow.
And
I was
then,
not expecting that response.
Yeah, well, and then having to kill one
Wow.
because it was in pain, and I did that,
Wow.
age 5, so that was great.
Wow.
Calves born deformed because the cow that was giving birth to the calf was too old. Right, and it had gone through too many seasons, and that doesn't happen anymore in as much as it's regulated, but we all know that it does.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking at my own research, I would say that cows in the dairy industry, they usually have 4 years solid where they are kept from sort of up until the age of 4, and then at 4 their productivity drops off and they're sold straight into the meat industry. So I mean, a cow can live, I think it's something like up to 20 years. You know, a cow can...
Bit beyond, yeah.
Beyond, that's
20,
what I mean.
25 years.
That's a fraction of their natural lifespan. So people, I think that... And then when you have to take into consideration, again, in the interest of education, to break it down without you know, getting too into depth, a cow is artificially inseminated every single year. She is then milked 10 out of those 12 months, and the baby's taken away from her almost immediately. Fundamentally, I think that's barbaric, is it not? Like, without putting too much of my own opinion into it, when you think about that as a concept, I mean, even if you could perhaps say that I'm projecting human emotions onto that cow, they do form bonds with their children. They are upset when they get taken away, and that is systematic abuse for the entirety of their lives.
Okay, it is systematic abuse. So, from a farmer's point of view, an economic point of view, they have to provide meat and food for the people who buy it.
Right.
So therefore, humanisation of an animal, that's a big problem. In as much as that's what we see, these animals aren't humans. They're not as evolved as us. Right.
Okay, yeah.
That's the argument, that's not my argument. Okay, so therefore it's okay because they've been bred for that purpose. That's the justification, right? I'm talking myself out of a life here, right? Because I don't see the justification there. I'll tell you now, after this conversation, however right I think, I will then go and eat meat. I know that, right? And I'll tell you why that is.
Okay.
I kind of enjoy mouth pleasure. Let's not go down the wrong road here, right? Okay, what I eat tastes good. Actually, okay, that's fine. In my case, that's actually a bit wrong because I burnt out a lot of my taste buds with cocaine abuse for years and years. So that's why I eat chili with everything.
Right.
But the things that I eat make me happy. Yeah. So serotonin is released when we do that. So I've been brought up, and where am I going? What I'm saying is that I am used to and enjoy what I eat, and what I eat is meat, if I don't think about the realities of where that comes from.
And I think that's the case for a lot of people.
Okay, so therefore, me being human, I have the ability to shut off that emotion and do what I'm going to do. Okay, whether I should or I shouldn't, I'm the same as millions of other people.
But I mean, I think it's refreshing for someone to give me that point of view, because the amount of times that I hear people, you know, again, you know, for argument's sake, let's say there's no right and wrong. We're both on different sides of the fence here, but for argument's sake, let's say no right and wrong here. What I will often get is not only people questioning my lifestyle and what I consume, but also defending so passionately, you know, their right to eat meat, and how they could never not eat meat, and how, you know, they don't care if it's an animal and I shouldn't be projecting my feelings onto them, sort of thing. And I haven't actually heard, in the last coming up to 8 years, I haven't actually heard someone say that they are actively turning off those emotions. That's a new opinion for me to hear.
Do you know what transference is?
No.
Okay, transference is when I'm talking to you about an issue and I project my feelings about that issue onto you. Okay, so the argument being, I as a meat eater would be worried that your opinions would then reflect from me. Okay,
right.
the reality is,
like you're going to catch veganism.
well, no, in as much as that I have angst against the veganism because I eat meat. What that actually is my guilt, and my guilt is then reflected in the way I deal with you as a vegan. I don't have any guilt, right? And I should have, I imagine. But if I lived my life with the guilt I should have, I'd have been crippled years ago. So what I'm saying to you is that person who is then justifying, what they do to you is actually saying, I feel guilty for what I'm doing, but I don't know how to change it. I don't want to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not saying you're wrong, right? They're saying, okay, I do have guilt. I do have something. And everyone, I imagine in the comments underneath this in YouTube, I'm going to have my head ripped off and I couldn't give a rat's ass.
Well, maybe not. They might hate me. You never know.
No, I doubt it. The fact of the matter is your veganism doesn't make you who you are.
That's true.
You have transitioned into a vegan. What, 13?
13, I went veggie. I went vegan when I was 19.
Okay, so let's get away from the world feelings, right? When you're 13 years old, well, I've written 13 on a pad, it must be important. What makes you change to vegetarianism? What caused you to transition?
Before I was 13, I didn't really understand what meat was. I hadn't really ever asked the question. One day I said to my mum, we were in Tesco, and I said, chickens, is that like a chicken? Chicken. I just did a hand, just did a chicken.
You did? They can see it?
Oh yeah, they can see it. I was like, like a chicken. And she was like, well, yeah. It was almost like, of course, that's a chicken. How have you not know this? You're 13, How has no one told you this? And I remember going around the supermarket and thinking, well, if a chicken's a chicken, a fish is a fish, and pork is a pig, and beef is a cow. And it was almost like I don't want to do that. I love these animals. I don't want to be a part of that. And then that night I said to my mum, I was like, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to do this.
Was your mum a meat eater?
My mum had always given me chicken and fish, but not red meat.
Okay.
I've had red meat a handful of times in my life.
Okay.
I've had, probably 5 times max before I was 13, when other people would give me bacon and stuff around their house or whatever.
Yeah.
But she was cool with it. She was like, okay, that's, if that's something you feel really passionate about. And then, 19, I was cooking for myself, so I could pretty much do whatever I wanted.
So, from the start, you had a support system that validated your feelings on it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay, so that helps.
Yeah.
Also makes you a more balanced human being if you're not combative with your parents and stuff like that as well.
Well, I wouldn't say that. Maybe on that one issue.
On that, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, Christ. Hello. We've all had teenage strife with our parents, I think. Actually, do you know what's weird? Is my father's a vicar, or was.
Ooh, okay.
He's now 84 and lives in France, living the life of Riley. My mother was. She was a registrar in a hospital and pretty hard line, but she got sick and died of multiple sclerosis. But she, if ever there was someone who didn't have anything to rebel against, it was me. Because no one gave me any shit. I remember walking into my sitting room at the time in Haileybury, where my dad worked then as a teacher, and told him that I smoked and I was a rebel and it was all that. And my dad literally put his newspaper down and just said, yeah, we know. And then put it up and just didn't give a shit.
I've definitely seen a comedy sketch about this.
Because he knew that if he knew what was going on, but he knew if he didn't get in my face, then I'm not gonna have to rebel any further. The brutal fact of the matter is I spiraled out of control for different reasons. But if you've got somebody there who's going to agree with you or help you, even if they don't agree, that's got to be the way. And a lot of parents don't have the patience, the money, or the ability to help you with that as well. So education of parents, i.e. educate the new generation who will be parents about what the thing. This all boils down to education, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely. And I constantly get the same feedback from. I mean, to be fair, I think the cow thing I usually get from people of an older generation. It was, milk equals calcium. Cows have to be milked. It was told to people over and over and over again and reinforced how important. I mean, if you look at the food pyramid, how important meat was in that. If you look at the food groups, it's been metaphorically shoved down our throats.
Well,
meat,
not
dairy,
metaphorically
dairy.
either. In reality, by the media. Now, don't forget the Meat Marketing Board and the dairy industry have lots of money.
Oh yeah.
And money influences media. So if I'm the head of whatever news brigade, right? I'm the head of Sky News, and I decide that I'm going to actually tell the reality of that.
You can't do that.
Right? Well, what's going to happen? Then Sky News is going to get, so the dairy's not going to subsidise their bullshit anymore. Yeah, the money gets taken off that station and put onto another, and then that media will then be swallowed up. The media is what forms all of our perceptions without education.
Absolutely.
So you are spoon-fed from a very early age, whether you watch TV or not. This is what everyone gets wrong. It's not just about television. Everything you read, apart from fiction, is governed by some kind of media body. So, you know, if it is Sky News, if it's the BBC, they are the worst offenders in the world, right? And they will tell you that they're liberals, and you'll watch Country File and they'll show you the realities of farming, right? But what they don't tell you is, that there was a massive political grant given by the Milk Marketing Board to really process for the kids how good milk is.
Oh, yeah.
No, what they're doing, mate, is facilitating the next generation knowing that this is what they need to believe to keep the money rolling in.
Well, I'm about to directly quote a couple of really great documentaries, which I really recommend everyone watch it in response to that. Cowspiracy, I feel like it's a pretty famous documentary at this point. It's on Netflix. You can literally... So it's just, and it's not biased, I don't feel. There's a great bit with a chicken if you need to if you're having a bad day.
Hold on a minute.
No, really. I know
There's a great bit with the chicken. You must watch it for that.
But, you know, if you're having a bad day, it'll really warm your heart. But for all of the facts in there as well. And what they also do in that documentary is they showcase how, for example, someone like Greenpeace. Everyone thinks of Greenpeace and they think, oh, well, Greenpeace must be championing veganism, right? No. Greenpeace have got nothing on there about the CO2 emission. Production of agriculture produces more CO2 emissions globally than the entire transportation sector. That's trucks, ships, cars, trains combined.
How?
Because you have to include into this the amount of... So a lot of it comes from the methane, right? So everyone knows about cow farts, right? Cow farts is like a thing. Methane is an actual part of this animal's digestive process.
Yep.
Okay. Now, methane is a lot more detrimental to the environment than CO2.
Yep.
Therefore, the emissions are a lot more dangerous. Even, you know, I don't know how you measure toxins, but coming from
toxicity
these animals,
levels, I imagine. Yeah, I have no idea, but yeah.
Coming from these animals, you also have to include things like farm runoff. So everyone knows plastic in the oceans is bad. We need to stop plastic in the oceans. Farm runoff, all of these animals are producing waste, which produces more methane, and that runoff goes directly into our oceans, which is causing what's called ocean dead zones, where not only can the fish not live there, but new sea life can't grow and can't thrive.
Okay.
You know, water consumption for these animals. Everyone knows about fracking. Fracking uses billions of litres of water, nowhere near as much as the dairy industry. Like, I feel like people get hooked on these hot topics, and they're important. Plastic in the ocean's important. Fracking's important. You know, transport, we need to reduce. No one's looking at animal agriculture, and I think that's because it's not had the spotlight put on it for the reasons that you mentioned earlier. You know, all of these conservation efforts, apart from Sea Shepherd, because they're wicked, love Sea Shepherd, you know, no one's recommending that you abstain from, or at least try to reduce your intake of animal products. It's crazy. It's almost like it's like a cowspiracy. It's in the name.
Okay, so arguably it is a conspiracy, though, isn't it? I mean, arguably because of the amount of money generated by farming, generated by milk marketing, generated by all of these things. You know, America was built on ranching and cow herding and all of that, you know, to feed these things. You know, these cow ranches and everything, that's how they stake their claim, put meat on it, grew up big herds, ended up being able to buy more because meat is money. And, you know, this is the thing. Now, that's been indoctrinated into us for so long that we no longer question why the media backs it. And also, you say that nowadays, you know, people are looking at milk as a bad thing, yet I still got requests to pay for my son to have milk in the class.
Still a thing.
And I'm like, yeah, you can stick that up your ass. Mostly because I'm a skinflint, but secondly because I do have a conscience about this, right? I love my animals. Okay, my dog Skylar, who sadly dead, was the apple of my eye because she was my best friend, right? And this dog, that when she died, I was fucking in pieces, right? Lily, the dog I have now, is mad as a box of frogs. She's a nightmare, but I still love her to pieces. I couldn't give her away, you know what I mean? So people say, yeah, but you say you love animals, but you don't. No, I genuinely do. But
Would you say in the same way you don't love someone else's dog you don't know? Is that how you would,
No,
translate
I
it?
would, if somebody else's dog runs up to me and, does that, say it was aggressive towards me, my first initial reaction isn't to go and, oh, fuck that and have it. It's like, all right, calm down, mate, everything's fine, make sure the dog's all right. Right? So, really, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not an animal hater, and I certainly don't agree with things being tested on animals. But, everyone can say this, right, and mean it, but that everyone's wrong, and including me. It's not my fault that they test animals, medicines on animals. It's not my fault that they test cosmetics on animals. Well, collectively, it's all of our faults.
Collectively, sure, yeah.
Collectively, it's all of our faults. So therefore, singularly,
No, I know what you're
singularly,
saying, yeah.
we're all responsible. But only with a group can you change things.
Well, absolutely.
So hence, people want to group all vegans together, all meat eaters together, because then they have somebody to throw rocks at. If vegans are spread out throughout the land and they aren't called vegans, they just live the life they do. Yeah, free-range vegans, not living inside walls. What I really mean is, if they're not called vegans, they're called people.
Yeah.
And meat eaters aren't called meat eaters, they're called people. And these things become a choice because they do not the right thing, they just do a different thing. Because they understand that actually what they've been fed is media poison to make them think a direction, then all of these people singularly can then make a difference.
Well, I'm on the same page with you, absolutely, with regards to that. The second documentary I was going to recommend to people is it's called Carnage. It's by Simon Amstel. You can watch it on iPlayer.
Right.
And not only is it very, very funny, honestly, it's a funny vegan documentary, okay. Regardless of whether you're vegan or you're a meat eater. It's very funny. But there's a big section of it on the way that media portrays animal products to the public. And they've got this amazing scene in it where all of these kids, it was in the 90s when Babe came out, and they'll get Happy Meal, and they're playing with the little Babe toys while they're eating their hamburgers. And
Holy
no one
shit,
sees the irony in this. Like, it's,
Do you know what, though, again, so like I say, it's all cyclical. It's come back to education again. Because those kids don't know that
they're not going to put those two together.
That bacon cheeseburger they're eating, they don't realise it's got bits of Babe in it.
Right.
And whatever the cow was called, because there must have been.
I think there was a cow.
Okay. I want to draw a line on this, and then I want to talk about personally. Okay, how is it difficult to make vegan food? Is it right? And I'm doing this genuinely from a position of I'm a bit stupid about this, okay? I'm not calling myself stupid, I'm not putting myself down, but what I am saying is I don't know how you eat, man. How do you cook? What the hell? But obviously I know how to cook. Yeah. So it's the same process.
Well, yeah, I've never cooked meat properly. Like I stopped eating meat.
I don't think I've ever cooked it properly.
I don't really know how you eat and vice versa. So I would say that maybe at first, as it's been, it's been around a third of, well, not quite a third of my life now. Yeah. So it's almost habit now. Yeah. But I would have to go back to when I first changed the way that I was living, and I would say that I wouldn't say easy. I would say that you do have to change quite a lot of things about the way you live your life. Yep. So, for example, if you want to live a vegan lifestyle, it doesn't just apply to diet. So I sold my sofas because they were feather stuffed. I sold all of my leather clothes, which I was a little emo kid. I loved all of my goth boots and I loved all that stuff. I was like putting it on eBay, really heartbroken about these jackets.
But you still did it.
Sure, I did it. Yeah,
you stood by what you believed in.
There's a whole other debate about whether second-hand leather, if there was any point in doing that. For me, I wanted to do it. That's why I did it. For me,
that's the best reason to do anything.
So, and I did have to change the way I ate. What I would say in answer to that is that now is the easiest it's ever been to go vegan. When I first went vegan, we had one readily available cheese alternative, and it was I don't know if I'm allowed to bash a brand, but
you can bash whoever you want.
It was called Cheesely, and it's like a solid lump of sick, and it's the worst thing in the world, and they still sell it, but if you want to go out and try it, feel free. It's in Holland and Barrett, and it was the worst. So I just didn't have cheese for a couple of years. We have now got so many different types of cheese alternatives. We've got so much different types of meat. I found vegan black pudding the other day. I know.
Okay. If you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, black pudding is made out of pig's blood. And finding a vegan alternative, that's strange. Okay, that's going to lead me on to another question. Okay, I have heard someone in a pub really loudly go, well, all you vegans, right, why do you want meat substitutes then if you're vegan? What's the answer to that?
Okay, so I'm going to have to go again. Or I can't talk for vegans all over
For
the
you.
planet. For me, I would say that I want my food to taste good. And as long as nothing's had to be hurt for me to get there, then I don't really care what you call it. If it's a sausage, then cool, it's a sausage. This thing tastes good. If you want to call it soy protein in a case in the shape of, in a tube shape, I don't really care about that. I don't, nobody's... I really
That's media driven again though, isn't it? Because if you were going into the supermarket and you saw soy protein in a waxy packet, aren't I great? Lovely. Everyone's going to go, what the fuck's that?
Right.
If you say sausage, soya sausage, yes, tastes good.
Well, this is another argument for it, I guess, because people that are new to veganism recognise the word sausage.
Yeah.
They think, well, I liked the sausage when it was made out of pork, so I might like the sausage now it's made out of a pork alternative. As someone that hasn't eaten a whole bunch of red meat, I'm not salivating over the idea of, and we have burgers that bleed and stuff, and that's really pissed a lot of people off for some strange reason. That we've got burgers that bleed beetroot stuff. Yeah, and it's really upset a load of people. I don't really understand why, but I'd eat it. It's because it's not. I'm not.
It's not an issue.
It's fun, right? It's not. Nothing's getting hurt.
Who's getting upset about the bleeding? Is that militant?
Meat eaters, I find.
Meat eaters.
Yeah. From what I'm just going from interactions online and getting really upset about it. If you don't want to eat the real thing, you shouldn't be reproducing it. Why are you? Why are you copying meat? If you guys have got such a problem with meat, we don't have a problem with. Well, okay, so I'll say we. I don't have a problem with meat on a plate or something that looks like meat on a plate. I have a problem with
the way it gets there.
The way it gets there. Yeah. That's the fundamental reason that I eat the way I eat. I live the way I live.
It's a choice, right? So you made a choice and you stick by that choice. So, right, when should vegans try and influence meat eaters to stop eating meat?
Okay. So, I think that's a big question. Personally, would I like more people to be vegan? Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have no hidden agenda there. I would like more people to be vegan because I think if more people were vegan, again, it would show a trend to these meat and dairy producers and it would show them that there is a decline. I think we'd get more delicious alternatives, which has been great for me over the last couple of years because now that more people are going vegan, I can walk into a restaurant and get a whole vegan menu.
Yeah. If
I'd have asked for a vegan menu 6-7 years ago, they'd have looked at me like I was crazy. You can go in Spoons now and get a whole vegan meal. It's great. So I'm all for that from a completely selfish point of view like that, and equally from a point of view that I would like there to be less animals being killed and being hurt.
Yep.
On the whole, that's something that I would like. I don't think you can convince anyone to do something that they don't want to do. I think that you have to want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then, that there's nothing you can do about that. Each person has to be able to do what they want to do, I think. And that's something that I've struggled with for a lot of years. That's something that I've thought, but you wouldn't, my argument would always be like, you wouldn't let a serial killer go around and murder people because it's something that they want to do. You'd stop them and you'd try and change them. Mm-hmm. In a way, sure, that's true, but you can't compare the two. You can't compare an entire generation of people that have been brought up eating a certain way. It's and it's what they're used to, and it's some people say all they can do, all they know. I think that, again, we're going back in that circle you talked about earlier. I don't think that vegans should necessarily be trying to convert people. I think that they should be trying to educate people in a friendly way and just explaining why they do what they do. I find sometimes it's very easy to get defensive. If I'm at a music festival and I've got a drink and someone wants a vegan debate with me, I'm like, I don't want to do this with you. I just want to talk about veganism right now. I just want to drink my vodka and listen to this band and have a good time. And I don't want to. And it's so easy to get defensive and be like, well, because of this and because of that, and you end up in a row with someone. And I've done that way too often before. I just think you have to look at it as this is something. And a lot of people are going to be ignorant towards you. A lot of people are going to, try and trick you out or ask you rude questions or, things like this. Mm-hmm. I think you have to look at it as doing the best you possibly can to just explain why you're doing what you're doing and hoping that it makes sense to someone.
Should you have to explain what you're doing?
Well, no.
Do you know what I mean?
Not in an ideal world.
If somebody comes to me and I've got a drink in my hand and they want to get in my face about, and it used to happen all the time, like, oh, you're Jim Distortion, you're this, you're that, and blah, blah, and I'm like, am I? You know, fuck off, I'm having a drink. Or yeah, I've just come off stage, so yeah, I'll entertain you. But why should you justify what you do? Now, I've asked you to come here today to talk about what you do, right? But so arguably I could be seen as doing that, but I pre-warned you what I was doing.
Sure.
And also said to you that I'm not here for conflict. And I think if people could take, and I've done so many podcasts about this, take emotion out of a situation, then you can find a way to communicate. Because it is, after all, emotion that will get in the way of someone educating themselves, because self-education is a lot more valid than being educated by somebody else, because you're actively striving for the truth as you see it, or you can find it.
And this is a very emotion-driven topic. You know, people, I still can't get through watching a lot of footage of slaughterhouses and stuff without getting upset.
Well, I watched that today.
Years, you know,
I watched something today and it was about 4.5 minutes, and the cows were literally turning round, trying to get through. You know, it goes down. You know, okay, I'm not doing this very well. Right, what happens is they walk down an ever decreasing corridor that then traps them, so they go through and then they're electrocuted or they've got a hammer blow, whatever. Right. The heartbreaking thing is the cow knows where it's going.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Now, then someone will say, oh, you're humanising, they don't understand it. I said, they fucking do, mate, because if they didn't, why would they try and turn around in a corridor they can't turn around in? Right? Now, it's kind of horrific watching that, but I knew that's how they died anyway. Yeah, I know the realities of where my meat comes from because I grew up, again, in the countryside and all of that. I've always known. And I'll say it again, I choose not to pay attention to that. Now, I'm a reasonably intelligent human being. I'm quite good at reasoning things. And the reason I do it is because nobody has challenged me on a societal level to change my thinking. Why the fuck should I? Is the answer. Why should you change your thinking? Because someone's in your face telling you you're wrong. The answer is you shouldn't.
No.
But if media all of a sudden, so newspapers, Sky News, BBC, everyone else suddenly dropped all pretense and told people the reality of the farming industry, the slaughterhouses, the milk marketing board, if they all did that, everyone's perception would be changed because they couldn't get away from the truth. And at the end of the day, it's truth that we're all searching for, so we say. A lot of people pay lip service to the fact that they love animals and they wouldn't kill them and they wouldn't do this and they don't do meat and blah, blah. A lot of people live that life like yourself, right? So there are people who are doing it for effect and people are doing it because they believe in it. And as long as there are believers who do it for the right reasons, right? There's a lot of human beings who have what's the word? God, I'm so dumb today. Who have they think that they're little. They're without a cause to stand behind.
Oh, okay.
They feel they're diminutive. They don't have a voice. So they find.
They sort of have to have something to define them.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
They find a soapbox to stand on. Yeah. Their residual self-image is not good unless they're fighting for a cause. And I actually know a person like this, and I've confronted them with it. You know, you pay lip service to being vegan and you pay lip service hostilely to anyone who isn't. Yeah, I've seen you eat meat. You know, to the point where it's ridiculous because it was in McDonald's, which is a place, incidentally, I've been to twice in my whole life because I know and always have known, maybe they've changed now, but, you know, having bleached chicken and, you know, and then scoured intestines and all of that, I've known the reality of that since I was 8 years old when I first went there. And I then came to my mother and said, I never want to go back to eat that, thanks. And I have no idea why, but I knew where the meat came from and what was going on.
Well, I mean, again, it's going back to advertising. It's going back to what advertising companies will use a lot of key terms when it comes to meat. And they'll use things to make the public feel better about what they're consuming. So, I mean, the reason that I mention it is because McDonald's have had, I don't know if you've seen, they've had this whole new marketing campaign where they're 100% British meat and they're field fresh. And okay, so it's British cows. That doesn't say anything about that. And I think people like to think, oh, well, the welfare standards, you know, in the UK. Now, sure, welfare standards for farm animals in the UK are higher than in other places. It doesn't change the fact that they all die the same way. That's not what the welfare standards are about. No. Free range eggs. Free range, people think, this is something that personally annoys me, is there's a company called the Happy Egg Company. Yep. And the advert for the chickens is the chickens and they're running around in the fields and, you know, they're having such a good time and the sun's on their back and you think, oh, well, you know, chickens are laying eggs anyway, I'll just get some chicken eggs. free range does not mean... How often are you driving around? I mean, we live in a reasonably rural area.
We do.
How often do you see chickens running around the field? And how often do you see big barns, big metal barns full of chickens? Free range means not in a cage. That's what free range legally... And people think, oh, they have to say barn. No, free range means not in a cage. So you can have chickens clambering over each other, breaking limbs, you know, having the ends of their beaks sawn off so that they're not pecking each other to death. That's your free range eggs.
Yep.
And, you know, and that's after half of the chicks that were coming down this conveyor belt were got rid of because they weren't useful for the egg industry.
Didn't the Happy Egg company get sued by somebody, and they had to change? They had to stop using the fact they had to be, if they were in barns, they had to say they were barn chickens.
I don't know. I hope so.
Because the Happy Egg company almost went bust because of it.
Really?
And then they had to buy and utilise, I might be horribly wrong, but I think this happened, they had to buy and utilise open ground so they could still use their adverts. You know, where the chicken is gleefully jumping off the back of the fucking 4x4 or whatever. Lies are what breeds all things. Yeah, so whatever you're selling, yeah, be it cars to chocolate, yeah. I don't know, right, you look at a car advert, okay, and it always says not available in Europe, not available in the UK, this spec of car isn't there. Right. So basically you've been lied to. So you're thinking about buying that car, which you can't get because it's not available in your country, but you're still thinking about going to that dealership and buying it. I've never gone to a dealership and bought a car. I don't have that much money. But hey, you know what I'm saying, right? The lies told in that are acceptable because it says in the small print, the reality. But that's not the reality. The reality is you're being shown a car that has got smoke through it. It drives itself. It's very shiny. It will stay like that forever. That's bullshit. You'll buy this new car. As soon as you've driven it out of the garage, you lose $5,000 off a new car. Done. Right? Then every year, so I've driven plenty of 40, 50 grand cars, but I bought them for 1,500 quid because they were 10 years old. Right? So that's the reality of it. But no one thinks that way when it's advertising. You show me a field full of hens, that have laid eggs, that are free, then I have no other choice but to believe that that's what that company sells. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, because why would I question that? It's not important to me. Yeah, while I'm sitting there watching, whatever I'm watching, eating my dinner, it's not important to me that they've lied. It's important to me that I think those chickens are okay, and I do because I've been reassured of that. Yeah. So the lies of the media and the advertising people, they're not. This isn't just one thing they're lying to you about. It's manipulating truth to form an alternative reality that makes things look better.
I also think it's human nature to want to believe what you want to believe.
Yeah.
I think if you want to carry on eating meat, you're going to convince yourself that it's not so bad. I think realistically, you are going to, and if you get some information, like, I really like eggs, and there's some chickens there running around, so I'll just eat those eggs, and I don't feel bad about these eggs now. I think part of you knows kind of maybe that's not true, and you could do some more research, but I'm good. I saw the chickens, and I get my eggs. And this is all I need to know about this.
That is, though, the way of things. So conflicts around the world, there are certain conflicts, and I'm not going to get into this, but there are certain conflicts in the world we as a British nation don't really know that they're happening.
I can believe that. Sure.
Because the media are not telling us. Yeah, I have to be careful because I don't want to get involved in the political thing about a conflict and different things. When you hear and you see these films about the CIA and all of this, and the spy's gone in and he's done this and he's infiltrated and they've won, and you see that there are dead people all around. All of those dead people have wives and kids and families. Yeah, but they don't tell you that. They don't give you the backstory to all the soldiers, their enemy. The cause and effect of war is, right? So Germany, 1944, blah blah. Hitler, he's a fuckhead. He completely crazy, right? But the absolute reality is that he has made his whole country believe in what he's saying because of where they were before. That person has then sold himself as their saviour, and we see him as the enemy, and therefore we, as the British people, take our soldiers and go and kill their soldiers. Why? Because, you have to defend yourself publicly. You have to be British at that time. So, basically, one person with a wife and a kid has been sent to another person to kill her who has a wife and a kid, but nobody questions that. So, fundamentally, we're seeing that we're the winners. We won that war. Well, what did you win? A fucking goldfish. What you actually did was stop a tyrant, but millions of innocents got caught in the way of that. So, now that's the strongest effect of media persuasion, i.e. propaganda. So propaganda, again, it's the same thing in a lesser form. But is it lesser form? Because, all of these animals are getting slaughtered and killed to feed us.
This is one of my
that got a bit deep, didn't it? Holy shit. Go on, sorry.
I'm just going to let you... this is something that I say that upsets a lot of people, and it's something that maybe might sound militant. I don't mean it to. I genuinely believe, I've got to be honest, I genuinely believe that one day we will look back on the way that we're treating animals now with a lot of shame. I don't think that this is... I think that we'll always eat meat. I think that human beings will always eat meat, even if it becomes genetically modified meat, even if it becomes meat that's being grown in a little petri dish. I don't really know the science behind it.
Yeah, I mean...
Yuck. I don't know. But I do think that the numbers of people at the moment, it started really in around 2017, and then 2018, 2019 they're calling the year of the vegan, because it's everywhere now. I do think that we are seeing a big shift in people's... the very fact that we're here talking about it now. Yeah,
and also you said it yourself, there are restaurants that are purely vegan. There are loads of, like Witherspoons, who have a vegan menu. People that, you can walk into a boozer and ask for a vegan whatever and you'll get it, where before you'd be laughed about. That's the thing. One thing I want to top on while we're here, is it just because change is different and people always rally against change that we're having such a problem, like meeting in the middle? Famous people, Matthew Pritchard from whatever program he was in, making that dirty vegan thing. So he spent years on MTV, doing the Johnny Knoxville thing and stapling his nuts to a bench, right? And then he come out of that, realised he was unhealthy and became like a triathlon athlete and a vegan.
Right.
And what he's not doing is going, I'm vegan, you're all shitheads. What he's actually doing is going, I'm vegan, look, I can make this. I can make you eat this. This is really nice. And he's doing that. And, the book itself, I bought a copy, right? And I vaguely know him. I've talked to him in the past, and he's an upstanding bloke. He owns a tattoo shop. He must be a great bloke, right? But at the end of the day, I think what he's doing is very solidly pushing his recipes and his lifestyle, and showing that everyone goes, well, veganism is unhealthy, and yes, you can't get the nutrition for this. Well, you bloody can, because he can run triathlons and he can do all that, and he's got a dog and he lives quite a nice life, and he's a vegan. He's not a fucking Martian.
I would say very confidently, without any sort of doubt in my mind, that you can absolutely be healthy and be vegan. As I said earlier, I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm just going on the people that have been vegan all of their lives and continue to, and my bones aren't crumbling underneath me, and if I
you seem to be able to breathe in and out and everything. You've got skin
my
and
nails
eyeballs
haven't fallen out of this, or anything like that. I'm doing okay.
I wonder why. I think the main problem is that when veganism started, like it did with you didn't know you were being militant. You believed in something so strongly, you changed your own life.
Absolutely.
And that life-changing affirmation for you wanted to share with people. Something good happens in your life, because that's what it is. You believe in something, so it's good. Something good in your life changes, or you do something good. You want to tell the world about it.
I wish I'd have articulated it like that earlier. That's exactly what I mean.
So there's nothing wrong with that, apart from, as you get older, you learn how to communicate better, to placate people, because you're sick and tired of fucking butting heads.
Well, some people do, yeah.
Yeah, well, some people do. I think I have. I'm quite a stringent person. I can be quite harsh, but I do genuinely nowadays want to find the reality of things, like as people see it. So my reality and yours is completely different. Yeah, I haven't felt angry towards you for what you believe in so far. I don't have an ability to agree with you 100%, in as much as I'm not going to change the way I am today, but I am changing the way I think and what I've read and what I've looked at, because I've educated myself, because I wanted not to be a stump and be able to talk about it on an equal level with you. So that education of myself, if I'm one person, by definition, that would mean, by the law of averages, another 10% of people who are meat eaters will change at some point or think about the realities of it. And that's all anyone's asking, isn't
absolutely. That's all I'm asking, is that you just think about it. Like, think about where the food come from. And because I think it's important for all of us to think about where our food comes from. Yeah.
I think you're right. And also, you're right about the buzzwords like plastic, and you're seeing pictures of seals with plastic around their necks and frisbees dying because they're on a beach. And you should see that. And you should acknowledge that.
Yeah. But
you shouldn't just see that. And you shouldn't feel better because you've acknowledged that and you've had one less plastic bag. Yeah? I mean, I've worked in retail, I know you have, everything is about plastic bag, everything is about putting it in, but because you don't know what you're doing, and that's why, when you have these plastic bags and things, and a 4-pack of beer, it's not about where the plastic goes, mate, it's about the 4-pack I'm just about to stick in my face. Mm-hmm. And once I've done that, and I put it in the bin, who cares? We're all recycling now because we have to, because of the bins, on a home level. But how many people go to work and have recycled bins in there? They don't, a lot of people do.
Yeah, no,
but a lot of people
my
don't.
Place of work doesn't, and it's something that I have actually raised, because you buy your food. I can show you in my bag right now. This is one day's worth of lunch, and there's 5 big plastic items in there, from like a little side dish in plastic, the main dish, then I got 2 drinks because I drunk the first one, I didn't have it, so I've got nowhere to fill up my water bottle, so I bought another drink. Mm-hmm. I'm one person, and that's one thing, and we're getting slightly off topic, but yes, the plastic issue is terrible, and now we all know about it, and that's great, and therefore we're seeing companies make 4-pack, the things that turtles get their heads caught in, I can never remember, ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The 4 ring things. People are making them out of turtle food now, and we're seeing a change, and that's great. We still need to carry on with it, but it's great. People don't know about, for example, I think it's something like for every ton of fish, I'm going to have to double check my facts on this. Again, right. I'm getting this from watching Cowspiracy. But every ton of fish that we catch in large open nets, you're getting 5 different species in there of what's called bikill. And you're getting things like turtles, things like people don't know about that. They see sustainable fishing. That's another buzz term,
because they don't know that what the nets do is drain the bottom or dredge the bottom of the ocean and grab everything that's there, then anything that isn't sellable either gets killed or thrown back. And by the time it gets thrown back, it's usually dead anyway.
Oh, sure. And another thing of this is, again, I'm just going on what I saw in this documentary, but a guy says, how do you justify this? Because this isn't sustainable. You're a sustainable fishing company and you're dredging up. And he tries to justify it by saying, well, we're digging up all of this nutrients from the seafloor, that the fish can now eat. And he was like, are you seeing any kind of numbers to reflect that? And the dude's like, no, but the nutrients in the seafloor, you can see his brain going
reaching for the lies to justify what he's doing. Do you know what he'd been better off doing? I'm a fisherman. I don't understand the ecology. I do what I'm doing. And then at least that closes it down. Because then instead of, this is my bugbear and hate. If you don't know about something or you're not interested in something, don't fucking talk about it.
Right.
Unless you found a way to educate yourself about it. People blanketly slag other people off for what they do, what they believe in, what colour they are, who they speak to, because they're stupid. Right? It's stupidity, and humans have a massive propensity for stupidity. Okay? I'm not a born again anything, right? But I have understood the power of knowledge since I was young. Yeah, or I buffed it against school because it bored me, because school didn't challenge me in any way intellectually, because quite frankly I don't want to regurgitate boring facts that aren't going to help me later on. Honestly, I understand the need for me to learn how to read and write and do arithmetic. Past that, I'd have found my own way, but that's me. Yeah, there's a lot of stupidity and a lot of bigotry dealt from stupidity, but then another way of talking about stupidity is not educated. Yeah, very few people are fundamentally stupid. Very few people cannot explain, unless they have learning difficulties and all of that. But very few human beings cannot progress through their own lack of knowledge to find some kind of truth through that knowledge.
Yeah.
I might be not agreeing with you in the way, but I know the reality of it. Other people genuinely don't know the reality of it and will be told it. And then they may change or they may not, but then at least they have a point of discussion through knowledge. So I think there's 3 main drives through this. 1, business wants to keep it running because it makes money. Media wants to do that because it makes money again. And 3, people aren't educated. Just because you and I know the reality of it doesn't mean that 50% of the country knows it. So maybe they should. And if people stop standing on soapboxes to educate people and actually just talk about it without it being stigmatised, like, you know, the LGBT communities now are more and more talked about, you know, that will, you know, the conflict that causes is now becoming less. The camera's dying, but that's fine. So, you know, basically, is it all down to education? Is it all down to that? Because we've come round and looped to that every single time.
We always seem to go back to that, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, right at the beginning of we started talking, you said that doctors would recommend cigarettes and that it would, you know, that was a thing that, oh, you should smoke. We now know that cigarettes are bad, okay? So we have warnings on cigarettes.
Yeah.
With pictures of people with their limbs amputated and their throats cut open. And can you imagine pitching the idea of, hey, you know, there's marked information here over the years that we've recorded that having a diet that includes a lot of animal protein, you know, effectively baby cow growth formula and red meat, it's not good for people, you know, it's causing a lot of diseases. Can we maybe put some warnings on the meat? Can you imagine the uproar if you had pictures, or even, you know, if you're not even talking about health benefits here, if you're talking about pictures of live happy cows or the slaughterhouse process or any of those things trying to do what we've done with cigarettes, and it's not that dissimilar. No. I know it seems really to a lot of people.
Well, right, the reality of that is, do you know why the cigarette thing has fallen? So the companies, so Philip Morris, for instance, who make cigarettes, Marlboro, all of these people, right? What happened was Marlboro made a set of adverts and it talked about the Marlboro country and they were cowboys.
Right.
Every single one of those people who were in those adverts died of cancer.
Cool.
Right? And I'm not talking bullshit. Look it up. Every single one of them. Then what happened was people started suing the tobacco industry for them getting cancer because they didn't know. The first one of those was the first coffin nail for the tobacco industry. So now it's got to the point where they're not even allowed to advertise on their own boxes.
Yeah.
So if we've gone from, in the 50s, smoke this, smoke it now, smoke lots of it, to don't do that, for God's sake, don't do that, right? We think that that's because of people's realisation for health. Do you know what it really is? The government needed to stop spending so much money on healthcare for cancer patients caused by smoking that the media perception was changed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can completely believe what you're saying, because
obviously that's an opinion, but it's an opinion based on facts that I've learned.
Yeah.
So if at some point the government or the power or whatever decide that we need to change the way we farm, what happens, then the same thing will happen, but it will not happen until the realisation is so great in the people that then influences change. And that's pretty sad realisation about the world we live in.
Yeah. Definitely.
And it's only ever getting worse because every kid I know, apart from my own because he hasn't got one, is attached to a phone or a tablet, attached to the internet. I myself am doing a show that will be released on the internet, and I fully understand the irony of all this. You know, when you fight against things and you do it, but I'm not a crusader for anything. If anything, the internet has enabled us to learn more reality than before, but that freedom of information comes at a cost. Because now everyone has an opinion on everything based on a very small amount of information because no one wants to dig deeper through and find the reality of it. So, when you have a standpoint in anything, make sure you dig a little deeper than what you're being fed.
That would be what I would finish with. I would just say, do your own digging, form your own opinions, decide what you want to do and what you want to be a part of. That's the best thing you can do, I feel, is get the right information for you.
Do you know what? That is the perfect place to end. Because whatever you believe in, whatever you're told, look outside of the boundaries of that. And maybe you'll find the actual truth. You might not even know you found the truth because obviously truth is perception moved by different influences. But you'll find the truth that works for you. And I think that's what you've done. And I think by education, I think, certain things in the way I eat may well change because I do understand the reality of it.
do vegan burrito nights on Tuesdays. Just letting you know. They're great. They're really good.
All right, count me in. Right, listen, thank you very much for doing this, for trusting me to not be, antagonistic to that. And it was good to hear somebody's actual reality instead of reading little bits on the internet. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
No problem. Right, let's turn this up.